Hello, everybody. Yes, we are back again. So today I'm going to discuss the issue of Edgar Lungu, a former president of Zambia. May his soul rest in peace. There is contestation between the families of Edgar Lunga and the government of Zambia as to where he should be buried or where he should be laid to rest, his final resting place. So now the family of Zambian president, former Zambian president, they say that he didn't have good relationship with incumbent president, President Hakainde Hichilema, whom they accuse of abusing him when he was still alive, and then which result him receiving late treatment for his, which led to his death. So they say when he was still alive, he was prevented from traveling to seek medical assistance abroad. But when he died, he want to bury him. But we all know that in African societies, the wishes of the deceased are respected. But constitutionally, in the Western Constitution, that's another way. Because if people from Zambia argue that according to the Constitution of Zambia, every president should be buried in Zambia according to the presidential, constitutions, whereby it stipulates how the funeral should be conducted. Here is the biggest problem now. The South African rule that against the family of the former president of Zambia, Dr. Edgar Lungu, and they say that he should be buried. He should be buried back home in Zambia. So now the problem is that his grave is already been dug. People who won a tender to bury him were Chinese company. Imagine a black man when he's still alive is indebted to Chinese. When you die, Chinese are burying you. So the Chinese already given a tender. They dug a grave. It's waiting for him. But that's not a problem. The biggest problem is that should Zambian presidency bury Edgar Lungu against his family and his wishes, and his family wish and his wishes. Now, the issue of the recession of over the dead body of people in African society is not a new thing. Remember the issue of Robert Mugabe. Robert Mugabe died in Singapore because he had a problem with the government. The government of Zimbabwe, led by ZANU, they didn't like him. And then before he died, and then they overthrow him. So he decided that he doesn't want to be buried by them. And then in Zimbabwe, in the context of Zimbabwe, the family of the Zimbabwean Mugabe family actually fulfilled his wish. He was buried in sacred place in his own villages against the government. The government attempt to dig him, but unsuccessfully, they didn't do that. So, but here in this regard, in the Mugabe, they succeeded. The question was asked, why in this context, this guy is not, they failed to actually to win this case or to convince South African court. But let's try to be honest. The power in African societies, many African leaders, they use occult. The dead spirit of the president is very important to rule the living ones. We all know that in Zimbabwean politics, there was an article in Zimbabwe newspaper arguing that the family of Mugabe were afraid that if Mugabe is buried within the Zimbabwe hero Accra wife, where his first wife was buried, that politician will go and manipulate, or they will go to the grave and bewitch him, or they will go and perform some rituals that to get more power. So they wanted his parts to get more power. They will go and dig him and get more power. So the family of Mugabe said, no, we cannot allow that, because it seems as these president families, they knew that political world is a dark world where medicine are used. Remember, Mugabe was eventually buried privately in his own villages. But the national hero Accra in Zimbabwe was actually established by Mugabe. Many people were buried there, but himself, he refused to be buried there. These things of presidency, living double lifestyle, when they are alive, they abuse they bury them against their wish, but when they die, they don't want to same thing to be done to them. I think we need to be honest about that. Now there is this issue of the cult that obsessed with power of the dead. It's a peculiar, or it's a normal thing in African societies. Remember the issue of Paul Biya. His physician, personal physician, Titius Ezo, was arrested over 15 years after he was a minister of health, public health under Paul Biya government. He accused, or he claimed that Paul Biya used the power of the dead to remain in power. He claimed that they use human blood, and other stuff. That he explained some demonic act used by government minister and drinking human blood and spending some time with the dead in the mortuaries. So that's what that guy was saying. Eventually, after the guy has been sentenced, he was actually released. Because remember, when Titius Ezo was revealing this cultism within the government of Paul Biya, they could not kill him. Because in the cult empire, you cannot kill one of the fellow members. What you do, you negotiate with them and say, what do you want? So probably Professor Titius Ezo wanted something, so they give him what he wanted and they release him. And then eventually that thing actually keep quiet. In this information about the cultism in Biya government, which is also running president at the age of 92, it was actually revealed in details in the books written by Professor Titius Ezo, his person, titled The Prison Meditations, Echo of My Silence. In his book, he narrates these horrific things that politicians do in order to remain powerful, look young, just like Paul Biya. Now, people may ask, is this only happened to the black people? No, same thing. In Zimbabwe, the former Rhodesian government doing those kind of activities of believing in dead human body for remaining power. Remember, even in South Africa here, there was also the issue of these the apartheid politicians, government. I think in the book, there's a book called The Lost Boys of Beds Island, where some of these ministers were performing rituals, sex rituals, with young boys, and then involving in associated drunk orgies, where they'll have sex with young boys so that they can remain youthful and have power. So the main point here, or the point I'm trying to make here, is that the issue of the power and occultism practices, it's a global phenomenon, which is many people who want to enter political world, they live in this dark world where the death of other people don't matter. Even if you look at this, when the politician die, some politician will say they want to be buried in their own family's grave, or they don't want to be buried in the national monument or hero monument, because they know that some politicians are very tricky. But my view on the issue of Edgar Lungu, I think the family know better. They know that there's an element of truth in these particular issues. The matter, or the issue here is that politics in Africa is complicated issues, owing to issue associated with the privilege of remaining in power, flying around, and so on and so forth. So the politicians have to work extra mile in order to maintain power. Hence, people like Professor Titius Ezo, when he was removed from the power and he was accused for corruption, he started to reveal their dirty tricks. As a result, they tried to say, okay, they release him, and then now they keep quiet, and the guys like Paul Biya continue to run. The same issue of the occultism, where the politicians use the grave of the deceased to perform the occult ritual, was also highlighted in one of the newspapers in Zimbabwe, where this politician are said to have gone to sleep with the dead people in one of the Zimbabwe newspapers. So you can go and look this information online and then read some detail about this political trickery as argued by Professor Titius Ozo and some Zimbabwean newspapers. But let's hope Edgar Lungu will rest in peace. But his family is afraid, like, his body can be used for occult practices by some politician to remain in power. But in realities, in African societies, the dead man wish should be respected.